The scent of jasmine clung to the midnight air as Wren Harrington hurried along the garden path. The heavy brocade of her evening gown whispered against the stone walkway, its dark blue fabric deliberately chosen to blend with the shadows of the Delhi Palace gardens. The British Raj's annual midsummer ball continued behind her, music and laughter spilling from the brilliantly lit windows, but Wren had seized her chance to escape when the Viceroy began his customary lengthy toast. She knew she had only minutes before her absence would be noticed. Her father, Colonel Richard Harrington, military advisor to the Viceroy of India, kept close watch on his only daughter, especially during such prestigious gatherings where the entirety of colonial high society observed their every move. The secluded alcove appeared just where Lady Pembroke's hastily sketched map had indicated, a small stone bench nestled between flowering shrubs, illuminated only by moonlight filtering through the branches overhead. Perfect for a clandestine rendezvous with the mysterious correspondent who had been leaving poetry wrapped around jasmine blossoms at her window for weeks. Wren settled onto the bench, smoothing her skirts with trembling hands. The night air raised goosebumps along her arms, though the heat of the Indian summer night remained oppressive. Her nervousness stemmed not from the temperature but from the audacity of what she was doing, meeting an unknown admirer in secret, violating every rule of propriety her finishing school in Hampshire had instilled. The soft crunch of boots on gravel alerted her to another's presence. A tall figure emerged from between the hedges, his silhouette unmistakable in the uniform of the Viceroy's guard. His face remained in shadow, but she recognized him instantly as one of the silent sentinels who stood watch at the palace gates. Not a gentleman of society, but one of the countless men who blended into the background of imperial life, observed but never truly seen by those they served. Miss Harrington. His voice was deeper than she'd imagined, with a cadence that suggested education beyond his station. You received my invitation. I did, she replied, studying him as he stepped into the moonlight. Though I confess, I'm still uncertain why a palace guard would risk his position to leave poetry for a colonel's daughter. His smile was unexpected, wry and intelligent, transforming his solemn face. Gabriel Sutherland was not handsome in the conventional sense of British aristocracy, but something in his features spoke of quiet strength and hidden depths. His uniform, though impeccably maintained, could not disguise the breadth of his shoulders or the lean strength of his frame. Some risks are worth taking, he said, remaining standing at a respectful distance. And some words must be spoken even when convention forbids them. Whose words were they? Wren asked. The poems you sent, Byron, Shelley, Keats, they aren't commonly read by palace guards? His smile deepened, amusement rather than offense in his expression. I found that assumptions about what a man in uniform might read are often mistaken. Before she could respond, voices drifted from the main path, other guests seeking respite from the stifling ballroom. Gabriel immediately stepped back into the shadows, his training evident in the swift, silent movement. Tomorrow, he whispered. The old library in the East Wing. 4:00. The staff takes tea then, and no one will disturb you. Then he was gone, melting into the darkness with practiced ease, leaving Wren with a racing heart and more questions than when she'd arrived. You appear distracted today, Miss Harrington, observed Mrs. Crawford, the Viceroy's wife, as they sat embroidering in the drawing-room the following afternoon. I do hope you're not suffering from the heat. Wren forced her attention back to the delicate stitching in her lap. Not at all, Mrs. Crawford. I'm perfectly well. Such a peculiar incident at the ball last night, continued the older woman, her needle moving with practiced precision. Lord Ainsley swears he saw you returning from the gardens alone. Most unusual for a young lady of your standing to wander unaccompanied. The thread pulled tight between Wren's fingers. I merely needed a moment of fresh air. The ballroom was rather warm. Indeed it was. Mrs. Crawford's tone remained pleasant, but her eyes were shrewd. One must be cautious in India, my dear. The boundaries between our world and theirs must be maintained, particularly for young women. Indiscretion breeds scandal, and scandal can ruin more than just one season. The warning was clear, wrapped though it was in polite concern. Wren nodded appropriately, murmuring assurances while inside her thoughts raced toward the afternoon appointment. As the clock neared 4, she excused herself with a carefully crafted excuse about retrieving a book on botanical illustration she had mentioned to Lady Pembroke's daughter. The East Wing Library was a forgotten gem of the palace, its shelves filled with leather-bound volumes collected by previous colonial administrators but rarely visited by the current occupants. Dust motes danced in the shafts of amber light filtering through tall windows as Wren slipped inside, closing the heavy door behind her. Gabriel was already there, standing before a shelf of ancient maps, dressed not in his guard's uniform but in simple civilian attire, a white shirt and dark trousers that would have suited any educated young man in London. The transformation was remarkable. Without the rigid confines of his uniform, he appeared altogether different, relaxed, scholarly, and oddly at home among the books. "You came," he said, turning to face her. "I shouldn't have," Wren replied honestly, though she made no move to leave. "Mrs. Crawford already suspects I was meeting someone in the gardens last night." "The Viceroy's wife, Mrs. Nothing," Gabriel acknowledged. "Which is why I chose this place. The staff believes I've been assigned to catalogue these books as part of the Viceroy's cultural preservation project." "And have you?" Wren moved closer, noticing an open journal on the table, filled with elegant handwriting. "In a manner of speaking." He gestured to the surrounding shelves. "I've been documenting the collection for nearly a year now, though my official duties remain at the gate." Wren's confusion must have shown on her face, for he continued, "There are aspects of my position that are not what they appear." "You speak like an educated man," she observed. "I was educated at Cambridge," he replied simply. "Before circumstances brought me to India. As a guard." His smile returned, tinged with something like secrets. "As a man with particular skills needed by the Empire." The mystery deepened, and Wren found herself drawn to the table where several books lay open. One contained intricate illustrations of Hindu temples, another detailed maps of northern India, and a third, most curiously, contained handwritten notes in several languages she couldn't identify. "You know Sanskrit," she said with surprise, recognizing the script from her father's collection. "And Persian." "And Hindi." He moved to stand beside her, close enough that she could smell the sandalwood soap he used. Languages reveal the heart of a culture in ways that military intelligence never can. Military intelligence. Wren looked up sharply. "You're not truly a guard at all, are you?" The library door suddenly rattled, and voices could be heard in the corridor outside. In an instant, Gabriel closed the books and guided Wren behind a tall bookcase, his finger to his lips. They stood pressed together in the narrow space as a servant entered, moved about briefly, then departed again. "I must return to my post," Gabriel whispered once the door had closed. "But I would very much like to continue our conversation." "How can I trust you when I don't even know who you truly are?" Wren challenged, though she remained where she was, acutely aware of his proximity. "That's fair." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small, worn volume. "Take this. It was my companion through years at university. The margin notes may tell you more about me than I could explain in an hour's conversation." Wren accepted the book, a collection of Wordsworth's poetry, their fingers brushing momentarily. "And if I wish to return it?" "The East Garden Gate. Midnight tomorrow. I'll be on duty there." He stepped back, his expression serious. "Choose carefully, Miss Harrington. Some knowledge cannot be unlearned." As he walked away, Wren opened the book to find an inscription on the flyleaf, "To Gabriel, may you find the path between worlds that your mother and I could not. With love, Father." Below it was a signature and a small insignia she didn't recognize, a crescent moon over what appeared to be mountains. That night, by candlelight, Wren pored over Gabriel's book. The margin notes revealed a mind both analytical and deeply poetic, with observations ranging from scholarly critique to personal reflection. Many comments were dated from his university years, but some were more recent, including observations about India that revealed a profound respect for the culture and traditions the British Empire so often dismissed. One passage in particular caught her attention, heavily underlined with a notation beside it: "These beauteous forms, through a long absence, have not been to me as is a landscape to a blind man's eye." In the margin, he had written, "Delhi, 1878, How strange to find oneself both observer and observed, both belonging and eternally separate. By morning, Wren felt she knew Gabriel Sutherland better than many of the suitors she had danced with for entire London seasons. She also understood that he was far more than a simple palace guard, though exactly what role he played remained unclear. Her father noticed her distraction at breakfast. Colonel Harrington was a stern man whose military bearing never quite softened, even in the privacy of their quarters. "You seem preoccupied this week, Wren," he remarked, setting down his newspaper. "I trust you're not developing an attachment to any of these colonial officers. Remember, we return to London in autumn, and your mother has already begun arrangements with the Viscount of Milford's family." Wren's stomach tightened at the reminder of her impending betrothal, a marriage of convenience to a man 30 years her senior, arranged to secure her father's political aspirations. "I've not forgotten, father." "Good." He returned to his paper. "There's talk of unrest in the northern provinces. The Viceroy may require my presence on an extended tour of inspection. You'll remain here under Mrs. Crawford's supervision." Wren nodded obediently, though her mind was already calculating how her father's absence might provide opportunities to learn more about the mysterious Gabriel Sutherland. That evening, a message arrived from Lady Pembroke, inviting Wren to an informal musical gathering. The note included a postscript: "My dear, do wear the pearl earrings I admired last week. They would complement the setting perfectly." Wren had never shown Lady Pembroke any pearl earrings. The message was clearly a coded one, though from whom, she couldn't be certain. Curiosity compelled her to attend, wearing her simplest evening dress and a borrowed pair of pearl drops from her maid. Lady Pembroke's reception room was filled with the usual colonial society members, but among the servants circulating with refreshments Wren glimpsed Gabriel. He wore the formal livery of the household staff rather than his guard's uniform, his posture perfect as he offered a tray of champagne glasses to a group of officers' wives. Throughout the evening, they exchanged no words, but twice their eyes met across the room. The second time, he subtly directed her gaze to a folded note tucked beneath a decorative vase near the French doors. When the opportunity presented itself, Wren collected the note and slipped it into her glove. Later, in the privacy of her bedroom, she unfolded it with trembling fingers. "The midnight meeting must be delayed. Events are unfolding that require my attention. The book you hold contains more than poetry. Look to the binding. Trust no one who inquires about our conversations." Puzzled, Wren examined the book carefully, eventually discovering that the leather binding had been skillfully modified to conceal thin papers pressed between the cover and end papers. Extracting them revealed sketches of what appeared to be military installations, along with coded notes she couldn't decipher. Her heart raced as realization dawned: Gabriel Sutherland was engaged in espionage. But for whom? The British government? Or something else entirely? 3 days passed with no word from Gabriel. Wren maintained her usual social schedule, attending teas and dinners with practiced grace while her mind churned with questions. Her father departed with the Viceroy's entourage as planned, leaving her with greater freedom but also an unsettled sense of foreboding. On the fourth evening, as she returned from a concert at the British Club, her maid met her with unusual agitation. "Miss, there's been a disturbance at the palace. They say a guard was discovered with documents he shouldn't have had, military papers about the northern defences. There's talk of treason." Wren's blood turned cold. "Do they say which guard?" "One of the Viceroy's personal guard, miss. They've taken him to the military jail in the old city." Sleep eluded Wren that night as she wrestled with terrible possibilities. If Gabriel had been arrested for espionage, the book in her possession implicated her as well. Worse still was the growing fear that she had been manipulated, that his interest in her had been merely a means to gain information about her father's work. By morning, she had resolved to discover the truth, whatever the cost. Using the excuse of charitable work, she convinced Mrs. Crawford to allow her to visit the old city, accompanied only by her maid and the household's elderly driver. Near the military compound, she dismissed both servants to complete shopping errands, promising to meet them in 2 hours. Then, drawing on courage she scarcely knew she possessed, Wren approached the compound gates, requesting an audience with Captain Thomas, her father's former adjutant and a man who had known her since childhood. The captain's surprise at seeing Colonel Harrington's daughter alone at the military jail quickly turned to concern. "Miss Harrington, this is hardly a suitable place for a lady," he admonished, ushering her into his sparse office. "Your father would be most displeased." "I apologize for the intrusion, Captain," Wren replied, summoning the composed demeanor expected of a colonel's daughter. "I've come about a rather delicate matter. I understand a palace guard has been arrested." The captain's expression sharpened. "How would you come to know such information, miss?" "Delhi is rife with gossip, Captain." "Is it true?" After a moment's hesitation, he nodded. "A serious matter. The man was found with classified documents regarding troop movements on the northern frontier. He claims to be working under orders, but his commanding officer denies authorizing any such activity." "May I ask the guard's name?" Wren kept her voice steady with effort. "Sutherland. Gabriel Sutherland." Captain Thomas studied her carefully. "Miss Harrington, has this man approached you at any time? Attempted to gain information about your father's work?" The direct question confirmed her worst fears, but something in the captain's tone gave her pause. Rather than the concern of a friend, his inquiry carried the weight of official investigation. "I don't believe I've ever spoken with any of the palace guards," she lied, her heart pounding. "I simply heard the servants discussing the arrest and was concerned about security at the residence, especially with father away." Captain Thomas seemed to accept this explanation, though his gaze remained evaluative. "Rest assured, the matter is being handled with appropriate discretion. The man will be questioned thoroughly before any further action is taken." "Questioned?" Wren echoed, sudden dread filling her at the euphemism. "Standard procedure for suspected espionage, Miss Harrington." The captain's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Now, I really must insist on having you escorted back to the Viceroy's residence immediately." As she was led from the compound, Wren caught a glimpse through an open doorway of a man being led down a corridor, his head bowed and wrists manacled. Though she saw only his profile for an instant, she recognized Gabriel, his face bruised and expression grimly resolute. The realization that he was being subjected to harsh interrogation, perhaps torture, left her physically ill. Whatever Gabriel's true purpose, Wren could not reconcile the thoughtful, educated man who had shared poetry and ideas with her being treated as an enemy of the empire. The weight of the book hidden in her quarters pressed on her conscience like a stone. That night, unable to sleep, Wren made a decision that would alter the course of her life irrevocably. Taking Gabriel's book of poetry, she carefully removed the hidden papers and examined them again. Among them was a small sketch that seemed familiar, a layout of buildings that, after careful consideration, she recognized as the military compound where Gabriel was being held. An audacious plan began to form. Lady Pembroke's upcoming charity visit to distribute food and blankets to the families of Indian soldiers might provide an opportunity to pass a message, if not directly to Gabriel, then perhaps to someone who could help him. The following morning, Wren volunteered enthusiastically for Lady Pembroke's charitable mission, presenting herself as eager to fulfill her Christian duty toward the less fortunate. Mrs. Crawford approved, pleased to see the Colonel's daughter engaging in appropriate feminine philanthropy rather than wandering unaccompanied. The charity visit proceeded as expected, with the ladies of colonial society distributing goods with well-intentioned condescension. Wren watched carefully for any opportunity, and it came when she noticed a young Indian man in servant's attire observing their group with particular attention. When their eyes met, he gave a nearly imperceptible nod toward a doorway behind the distribution tables. Excusing herself on the pretext of retrieving more blankets from their carriage, Wren slipped away from the group and found herself in a small storeroom where the young man waited. "You are Miss Harrington," he stated quietly. "He said you might come." "Gabriel?" Hope surged within her. "You know him." "I serve the same cause," the man replied cryptically. "The situation is grave. They believe he is a Russian agent. The evidence is compelling because it was manufactured to be so." "I don't understand." Mr. Sutherland was investigating corruption within the British administration, officials selling military secrets not just to Russia, but to anyone willing to pay. He discovered that Captain Thomas is deeply involved. The revelation staggered Wren. Captain Thomas, her father's trusted colleague, a traitor? How can I possibly help? She whispered. The real documents, the ones proving the captain's guilt, were hidden by Mr. Sutherland before his arrest. He said you would understand where to find them. The young man's gaze was intense. He also said to tell you that some crowns remain invisible until the moment they must be worn. The cryptic message confused Wren, but she had no time to ponder it as voices approached the storeroom. The young man pressed a small key into her palm before disappearing through a back entrance, leaving Wren to compose herself and return to the charity group with feigned apologies for her absence. That evening, as she prepared for bed, Wren contemplated Gabriel's message. The crown reference made no sense, but the hidden documents, where would he expect her to look? The answer came suddenly as she recalled their conversation in the library about languages revealing the heart of a culture. The Hindu temple illustrations in one of the books they had examined together had featured a hidden chamber beneath the main altar. The East Wing Library. That must be where Gabriel had concealed the evidence. With the household asleep and only minimal guard presence due to the viceroy's absence, Wren wrapped a dark shawl around her nightdress and made her way through the silent corridors to the library. The small key fit perfectly into the lock of an ornate wooden cabinet she recalled Gabriel standing near during their meeting. Inside was not documents, but a single letter addressed to her, along with a small leather case. The letter was brief but revelatory. Dearest Wren, if you are reading this, circumstances have forced my hand. The man you know as a palace guard is but one face I wear in service to the crown. My true position as an agent of British intelligence has been compromised by those I was sent to investigate. The evidence against Captain Thomas and his conspirators is contained in the accompanying case, encoded for the eyes of my superiors in London only. I ask more than I have any right to. Deliver this to the British consul in Bombay, a man named Whitaker who will know what to do with it. Trust no one else in Delhi. Whatever happens, know that my feelings for you were never part of my mission, they were the unexpected light in what has otherwise been a life of shadows. With deepest affection, Gabriel. The letter confirmed what Wren had begun to suspect. Gabriel was no traitor but a government agent working undercover. The revelation both relieved and terrified her, for it meant powerful people within the colonial administration had reason to want him silenced permanently. The leather case contained papers sealed with wax and official-looking stamps. Wren knew that delivering them as requested meant leaving Delhi immediately, abandoning her position in colonial society, and potentially endangering herself. Yet the alternative, leaving Gabriel to face execution for treason, was unthinkable. Dawn found Wren Harrington dressed for travel, a small valise packed with essentials and Gabriel's evidence secured beneath her clothing. She had left a letter for Mrs. Crawford claiming a sudden invitation from her mother's cousin in Bombay, a distant relation who existed only in Wren's imagination but whose name would withstand casual scrutiny. The railway station bustled with early morning travellers, British officials, wealthy Indian merchants, and the multitude of servants who attended them. Wren purchased a first-class ticket to Bombay, her heart pounding as she scanned the crowded platform for any sign she was being followed. As the train prepared to depart, a commotion erupted near the station entrance. Military police were questioning passengers, examining papers, clearly searching for someone. Wren shrank into her compartment, pulling the curtains closed as footsteps approached. The door slid open to reveal Captain Thomas himself, his uniform immaculate and expression coolly professional. Miss Harrington. What a surprise to find you travelling unaccompanied. Captain. Wren forced her voice to remain steady. I've received an urgent summons from my mother's family in Bombay. Mrs. Crawford approved my journey. Indeed. His smile didn't reach his eyes. How curious that Mrs. Crawford mentioned nothing of this when I called at the residence this morning. In fact, she seemed quite concerned about your absence. Wren's mouth went dry. Perhaps my note was delayed in reaching her. Perhaps. Captain Thomas stepped fully into the compartment, closing the door behind him. Or perhaps your sudden departure is connected to the escape of a certain prisoner from military custody last night. Escape? Wren feigned confusion. I don't understand. Sutherland managed to overpower his guards and flee, the captain explained, watching her face carefully. A remarkable coincidence that you chose this morning to travel, wouldn't you say? Before Wren could respond, the train whistle blew, and the carriage lurched forward as they departed the station. Captain Thomas maintained his balance effortlessly, never taking his eyes from her face. "I'll be accompanying you to the next station, Miss Harrington, where we can sort out this misunderstanding. I'm sure your father would want me to ensure your safety during such uncertain times." The implication was clear: she was effectively under arrest. Wren's mind raced, seeking any possibility of escape or delaying tactic. The evidence hidden beneath her traveling costume seemed to burn against her skin. As the train gathered speed, leaving Delhi behind, Captain Thomas seated himself opposite her, still watching with predatory patience. "You should know that harboring a traitor is itself treasonous, Miss Harrington. Your father's position cannot protect you from such serious charges." "Captain," Wren began, desperately improvising, "I believe there's been a terrible misunderstanding. I found some papers in the library that may explain." A sudden commotion in the corridor interrupted her. The compartment door flew open, and a railway official burst in, his face flushed with urgency. "Captain! There's an emergency telegraph for you from Delhi headquarters. They say it's of utmost importance, something about Russian agents at the Northwest Garrison." Thomas hesitated, clearly torn between maintaining his watch over Wren and responding to what could be a critical military situation. Finally, he stood. "I'll return momentarily, Miss Harrington. Do not attempt to leave this compartment." As soon as he departed, the railway official's deferential manner vanished. He closed the compartment door and turned to Wren with a familiar wry smile that transformed his face despite the official's uniform and graying mustache. "Gabriel," she gasped, scarcely recognizing him beneath the disguise. "How? There's no time," he interrupted, quickly removing his jacket. "Thomas will discover the telegraph was falsified within minutes. We must move now." From beneath the railway uniform, he produced a bundle of fabric, a servant woman's sari and head covering. "Your only chance is to become invisible before his eyes. Can you trust me enough to follow my instructions exactly?" Wren nodded, her heart racing as Gabriel efficiently helped her don the disguise over her traveling clothes, explaining in hurried whispers as they worked. "Thomas is the center of an espionage ring selling British military secrets. My mission was to identify all involved before they discovered a planned offensive against the northern tribes. When I found evidence implicating Thomas, I knew my cover would soon be compromised." "The papers," Wren began, reaching for the hidden evidence. "Keep them secure," Gabriel instructed. "We'll need them when we reach Bombay. For now, remember, you are a maidservant to a wealthy Indian merchant's wife. Keep your head down, speak to no one, and follow 2 carriages behind me when we change trains at Jaipur." The transformation complete, Gabriel surveyed her with approval. "The daughter of Colonel Harrington has disappeared, replaced by one of India's countless invisible women." "But you," Wren protested, "Thomas will recognize you." Gabriel smiled again, this time with genuine warmth. "Not in my true face, he won't." With deft movements, he removed the false mustache and wiped away subtle cosmetics that had aged him. The railway uniform came off to reveal finely tailored Indian clothing beneath, the attire of a wealthy native merchant. From his pocket, he produced a small case containing what appeared to be official documentation with elaborate seals. "Prince Gavin Singh, Special Envoy to the Governor-General," he explained, showing her papers that looked remarkably authentic. "My mother's family has served the British Crown for generations while maintaining their Indian heritage. It provides certain advantages in moving between worlds." Wren stared in astonishment as the final pieces fell into place. "Your crown was hidden in plain sight," she whispered, understanding at last the meaning of his cryptic message. Voices in the corridor signaled Captain Thomas's return. Gabriel quickly adjusted Wren's head covering to better conceal her features. "Remember, invisible, silent, 2 carriages behind. We'll reach Jaipur by nightfall." With a last lingering look that conveyed everything words could not, he slipped from the compartment moments before Thomas returned, leaving Wren to gather her courage for the performance of her life. 3 days later, the evidence had been delivered to the British consul in Bombay and telegrams dispatched to London. Wren and Gabriel sat in the private garden of a secluded house belonging to Gabriel's maternal uncle, an influential merchant with connections throughout India. Captain Thomas and 3 other officials have been arrested, Gabriel informed her, setting aside a just-delivered message. Your father has been cleared of any involvement and is returning to Delhi to assist with the investigation. Wren nodded, relief washing through her at the news of her father's innocence. And what of us? Will they charge me as an accomplice to your escape? On the contrary, Gabriel replied, taking her hand. The official record will show that Miss Wren Harrington bravely assisted a government agent at great personal risk. Your reputation will remain intact, perhaps even enhanced by your patriotic actions. And you, she asked softly. Will you return to your life of shadows? Gabriel's expression grew serious. That depends entirely on you, Wren. My assignment here is complete, and London has granted me leave to choose my next posting. He hesitated, then continued with careful words. I have connections in diplomatic circles, positions that would allow me to serve the crown openly, with my true name and heritage acknowledged. Positions that might include a wife. Wren asked, her heart quickening. If she were willing to accept a man whose bloodline spans 2 worlds, he answered, his eyes never leaving hers. A man who has lived behind masks for so long that sometimes he fears his true self has been lost. Wren squeezed his hand, thinking of the journey that had brought them to this moment, from palace guard and colonel's daughter to fugitives and now, perhaps, to something entirely new. I think I've seen your true self all along, she said. In the poetry you shared, the risks you took, the trust you placed in me when everything was at stake. She smiled. Perhaps it's time for both of us to step into the light. Gabriel raised her hand to his lips, his touch a promise of all that might come. Then let us begin as we mean to continue, with honesty between us and adventure before us. In the garden's tranquil beauty, as the sun cast its golden afternoon light across their faces, Wren Harrington and Gabriel Sutherland, guard and lady, prince and partner, man and woman, embraced a future neither could have imagined when first they met in the shadows of the Delhi palace. His hidden crown now revealed, her courage now proven, they faced together whatever tomorrow might bring.